What's up, guys? We got to talk about Black Lives Matter because I have some very strong opinions about that movement. And we also have this new article right here that says white American support for Black Lives Matter falls to lowest point since 2020 in a new poll. Remember, this is just 3 years ago. So the fact that support has fallen this low really says a lot about the overall reputation of the Black Lives Matter movement. Let's just go ahead and read a new poll released by the Pew Research Center this week. Indicates American support for Black Lives Matter has fallen to its lowest point since the organization began surveying U.S. adults in 2020 following the murder of George Floyd. During the height of the protests after Floyd's death 3 years ago, 67% of Americans surveyed said that they supported the movement. However, only 51% now somewhat support the group. Opposition to the group aimed at ending racial prejudice, has grown. 46% of Americans surveyed claimed they oppose BLM compared to 31% in 2020. This stat right here is very interesting because it literally says here that in 2023, today, you've got 46% of Americans who claim that they oppose Black Lives Matter. However, that number was only 31% in 2020. So just 3 years ago, only 31% of Americans oppose Black Lives Matter. Today, 46% of them do. And I have a lot that I want to say about it. And so I'll just start reading the article there and I'll just kind of give my thoughts on this whole thing. You know, Black Lives Matter has had a crap ton of controversies. And I think it's been more than obvious for a long time that a lot of the black movements that you see today that claim to be out there to help black people and stop racial injustice and make things better for minorities and marginalized communities and all these big words that they use, I think a lot of those organizations are scams. I think they're complete frauds. They're complete scams. And I think the proof is in the pudding. Can somebody name me anything tangible that Black Lives Matter has done? I'm not talking about a city ordinance that says, oh, you got to raise the Black Lives Matter flag at the state capitol. Because I've seen stuff like that. Like when I was in college, they passed something at the college campus where you could raise the flag on the campus of the college that I went to. I've seen stuff like that. I think they even raised the flag on the White House lawn, if I'm not mistaken. But the bottom line is, you see you see things that are not really tangible. It's like performative stuff. You know what I mean? It's like the only things that I've seen the Black Lives Matter movement actually get passed or tangibly done is they got a street named after it, or, you know, they got a painting of Black Lives Matter on the street, or they got the flag raised up. Like, what actually got done? And this is where the scam comes in. Because they made a crap ton of money from the donations that they received when they took advantage of the George Floyd movement in order to get their names out there, right? Well, okay, you used George Floyd in your movement and he became the backbone of your movement and you raised a crap ton of money because of it. Well, what happened to the money? Oh, Patrisse Cullors, one of the founders, used it to buy a mansion and several other properties. Oh, Patrisse Cullors, or whoever it was, somebody in that organization used it to pay their brother for security. By the way, he has no security background, but they paid him like $150,000 salary, and then they gave him like $900,000 to his company to do security for Black Lives Matter. It's just like, you know, the fix is in. Like, obviously, there's a lot of corruption that is going on with Black Lives Matter. But to just circle back to my point about nothing being accomplished, like I said, it's cute that, you know, you've gotten flags raised up and streets named after you. And, you know, you got a bunch of churches and businesses that got the Black Lives Matter flag inside of their store displayed at the front window. Congratulations. But what actual laws have you gotten passed? Because let me tell you the difference. And I've said this all the time in private. I've never said this publicly, but I have these conversations with my family in private because we talk about this stuff. If you really think about it, there hasn't been a real significant movement that actually got things done on behalf of black people and minorities since Dr. Martin Luther King 70 years ago. We're talking about 1955. Let me tell you what I mean. So Dr. Martin Luther King's civil rights movement during the 1960s and the 50s, led to the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, while the Voting Rights Act aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote. That's right, folks. Black people could not vote until 1965. That is a fact. And this would not have been done if it weren't for Dr. Martin Luther King. Let me tell you another amazing thing that he did. Dr. Martin Luther King's movement was behind the Montgomery bus boycott of 1955. Most of you guys remember that boycott because you hear the stories about Rosa Parks and all that stuff, wouldn't give up her seat. That's what led to the Montgomery bus boycott. Well, guess what happened during the Montgomery bus boycott? A lot of people don't know this. The Montgomery bus boycott lasted for more than 365 days. It lasted for over an entire year. And during this entire year, during the Montgomery bus boycott, not a single black person rode the bus for an entire year. Remember, this is 1955. You don't have cars. You know, everybody doesn't have a car like they do today. So what did they have to do if they weren't taking the bus? They had to walk. Folks were so dedicated to the movement. They walked to work every single day, miles to work, instead of taking a bus. Because of this boycott, what happened? Did they get a bunch of Black Lives Matter flags all over the place and signs painted on the street? No. You know what they got? This led to the desegregation of the Montgomery public transit system, which is one of the first major victories in the civil rights movement. This took place in 1955. If we look to today, what has Black Lives Matter actually done? I've said this. I don't consider the Black Lives Matter movement to be an actual black movement. I don't consider this to be a movement for black people by black people. I consider this to be a money grab. That's really what I think. And this isn't the only movement. There are other so-called black movements that I think are just money grabs. They're pimping race and they're taking control. They're manipulating people's emotions in order to raise money to not get anything done. That is literally what you were saying. Once again, what has Black Lives Matter done? So I'm not surprised that white American support for the movement has fallen because, you know, they've kind of lost a lot of credibility. Like, they haven't done anything. Nothing tangible has gotten done. I remember they were pushing for like some sort of like police accountability bill to get passed in Minnesota because of the George Floyd thing. That didn't happen. So like, you know, like where are we at with it? You know, like what's actually going on here besides the fact that they've raised multi millions of dollars and nobody has any idea where the heck the money went. Nobody knows who got the money, what the money was been using for. Did anything tangible come out of this? Like, I just think that the Black Lives Matter movement is a total fraud. Like, I get that they're very popular. They were covered in the media. There were a lot of protests behind the George Floyd movement and all of that's great. But what have you actually done? And one of my biggest problems with this movement is nothing has actually gotten done. I will always have respect for a movement that gets things done. I do not have respect for a movement that raised a bunch of money, got a bunch of flags raised, but nothing has actually happened. So that's really just kind of my opinion on the whole thing. And I just want to say this. I really think that we as black people have got to deal with this. It's like the elephant in the room. We never talk about it, but I really feel that we have to. We have got to start discussing and figuring out ways to get a huge movement behind the black on black violence. I really think so. And I know a lot of people say, oh, it's not right to say that because people always kill people where they live. Like, I get it. And you're right. But black on black violence is a real thing. Like Tupac has this quote. What do you say? He said, Tupac has this quote in his song where he says, and they say it's the white man I should fear, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here. I can't lie. Ain't no love on the other side. Like Tupac literally has this quote, and it's such a true quote because when I just think of my own life, I haven't had a lot of violent altercations, thank God, but the few violent altercations that I've had have always been another black person trying to commit harm to me. It's always been that way. I've never had a threat from another white person. And this is just me telling my truth. It's always been from another black person. Some Negro, you know, with his pants hanging out his behind, you know, like those type of people, some gangbanger, like it's always those types of people. And I feel like we as black people have to deal with that. We have to. We can't keep blaming white people for everything. We need to hold each other accountable and go within our own communities and try to figure out a way to get the guns out of there, stop the gangs from doing what they're doing. Like we have got to do something because seriously, just for me being in Chicago, the black on black violence it really is outrageous. Like it is outrageous. And I'm just going to tell the truth here. There are a small group of black people in black communities that are terrorizing that community. I mean, you really have serial killers in some of these neighborhoods. And I feel like we're not talking about that enough. And I feel like we need to, instead of just saying, oh, you know, the white man this or the white man that. Like, we really got to hold ourselves accountable. And, you know, the last thing I'll say about this, too, is I really feel that black people are one of the only races that, and I'm not talking about like Africans in Africa and everything like that. That's a whole different story. But I think black people in America have so much power, so much influence, so much money collectively. I think we're the only group in America that can actually fix our own problems. I really do. I think if we really actually came together and came up with a comprehensive plan and actually stuck together, I actually think the black people could probably fix their own problems. But the problem is we're not unified. We are very divided. We don't have any leadership. You know, back in the day, there was leadership. There was Dr. Martin Luther King. There was leadership. There were movements. You had Dr. Martin Luther King. You had Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. You had the Black Panther Party. You had Stokely Carmichael and those people. You know, today we just don't really have anybody. You know what I mean? So I think that's the other problem with it. We're in a situation where we're looking for leadership, but all we really got is a bunch of hustlers and a bunch of scammers. We got a bunch of black pastors that are hustlers and scammers. We got the Black Lives Matter movement that's a bunch of hustlers and scammers. We don't have a real actual movement that's getting things done with real actual leadership. And that is something that we are missing. And that is something that we desperately need, in my opinion. And so, yeah. Okay, I think I've spoken enough. Okay, guys, that will go ahead and conclude today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.